We're actually up to Sif Chav Gimel number 23, but 23 is quite long, technical, and very unlikely to be relevant nowadays. It's all about if you made a mistake and only read. We learned last week that each aliyah has to be a minimum of 3 verses. So all different scenarios of somebody who made a mistake and only read 2 verses. But so we're going to skip that. We'll go to number 24. Katan, a minor, somebody who's less than 13-year-old, cannot be the reader and is not called to be an ola. So somebody who's under bar mitzvah cannot be a bal koreh. He can't learn from the Torah, nor can he be called for one of the aliyahs. I think now we kind of assume that to be taken for granted, but at least theoretically, it's not. There are other opinions about this, but this is the ruling of the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch and is, of course, the widespread custom that nobody gets an aliyah before they are bar mitzvah. After completing Kriyas Torah, half Kaddish is said, and the Sefer Torah is raised in this manner. The one who raises it opens the Sefer Torah so that 3 columns of writing are revealed. He then displays it to his right and left, to those in front and in back of him, because it is a mitzvah for everyone to see the writing. Right, so the Sephardi custom, as well as the minhag in Yerushalayim, is that the Sefer Torah is raised before laning the Torah. But the Ashkenazi custom is, as it says here, that we raise the Sefer Torah after the laning, and you turn around so that you display it to all to everyone, right, left, back, and front. Some people have the custom that the person who does Hagbah makes a full circle, 360 degrees. Others have the custom, which is the Chabad custom, that you do 180 degrees to the right, and then turn back and do 180 degrees to the left. At this time, the Sefer Torah is said. The Sefer Torah is then rolled up. It is a mitzvah that it be rolled up so that the seam be centered between the 2 rolls of the Sefer Torah. The Torah should be rolled until the nearest seam is located in the middle. If the seam preceding the part read is nearest, it should be rolled in that direction. If the seam after the part read is nearest, it should be rolled in that direction, because it is best to minimize the rolling out of respect to the Sefer Torah. So you're going to basically each page, if you will, each piece of parchment has 4 columns on it usually. So you open it to 3 columns, and you also open it to a seam, and you make sure when you roll it up that the seam is a middle between the 2 rolls.
Rabbi, is there any physical reason for doing that? I mean, would the Torah get more likely ripped or something if it was on one? Is that what it is?
It's interesting you should mention. That's always what I understood. I always understood that it's a sort of a practical advice. He doesn't say here why, but that's how I understood it. I always understood it to be that it's just for the safety, so to speak, of the Sefer Torah, that if you have the seam there in case something happens and it gets ripped, it rips on the seam, as opposed to bending the middle or even ripping the middle of a page. But I'm not sure. I mean, I don't even know if that's really a realistic concern that the parchment would rip by mistake. I've never seen that happen, so I'm not sure. There's a couple of things he doesn't get into over here. One is he doesn't talk about when you roll the Sefer Torah. The widespread Ashkenazi custom is that the person who does Hagbah sits down, and then he rolls it closed with the assistance of whoever's going to get the Sefer Torah dressed. The Chabad custom is that the person who does Hagbah himself actually puts the Sefer Torah back on the bima, rolls it up, and then sits down for it to get dressed. Additionally, there's 2 opinions as to where the belt of the Sefer Torah should be. There's a belt goes around the Sefer Torah. So again, many have the custom that it should be on the top third of the Sefer Torah. The Chabad custom is that it should be specifically on the bottom third of the Sefer Torah. I don't remember all the reasons why. There's a lot of different reasons suggested, but the basic, what I recall, is that it's based on different readings of the Medrash of when Hashem gave Moshe the Torah or the Luchos, how he was holding it, where Moshe took it from the bottom part, a third, or from the top third, something along those lines as a Medrash to that effect. I did not have a chance to look it up, so I apologize. Okay, 26. Every reading of the Torah is followed by half a Kaddish, except a Mincha on Shabbos and a Mincha on a fast day. We rely on the Kaddish that is said before the Shemona Esrei. So a Mincha on Shabbos, right after the reading of the Torah, we put the Sefer Torah away and we say Kaddish. So that Kaddish serves a twofold purpose. It serves as the closure for reading of the Torah, and it also serves as the introduction to the Amidah. Some say, in Chabad, we actually don't say very much between Leining and Mincha and Shabbos. And Minhag Ashkenaz say L'David Mizmar, and other some, so there's more interruption and Kalmali Rachamim. And also the same thing is on a fast day. That on a fast day, there's a lot of interruption because between Leining and the Amidah, you have the reading of the Haftorah. So there's quite a big interruption, and yet we still say that the Kaddish that's going to be said after the Haftorah can serve as this dual purpose, and therefore we don't need a separate Kaddish to be said after Leining. Some Chabad shuls have the custom that certainly on Shabbos Mincha, that the Chazan starts saying Kaddish immediately after Leining and draws it out very slowly so that he finishes in close proximity to the Amidah. So some people do it that way. Some also have the custom that really this Kaddish quote unquote, belongs to the person who's Leining. Whoever's Leining, he's leading the Leining, so he should say the Kaddish afterwards. But there is also a custom that somebody who is an Aval, again, some Chabad and some other communities have this custom, that somebody who's an Aval or a Yartzeit, so he says the Kaddish instead, and either way is fine. On Monday and Thursday, after raising the Torah, the Chazan says the prayer, Yehi Ratzon. The congregation should listen and respond, Amen. On days when Tachnun is omitted, Yehi Ratzon is not said. Okay, so again, this is actually not the Chabad custom, but it is the widespread Ashkenazi custom. That there's a Yehi Ratzon, there's a list of Yehi Ratzons that the Chazan said. If you daven in a Nusach Ashkenaz shul, you're certainly familiar with this. The Kayim Banu Chachmi Yisrael Heimun Hashem of name, that's one of them. I forget exactly how all of them go. And then he doesn't mention it here, but there's the last section of that Yehi Ratzon. Not only does the congregation respond Amen, but actually the entire congregation recites it together. Yet does that ring a bell, Bill?
A little bit. I'm not exactly sure where it's at. I don't have a
So if you're davening in Yeshurun on a Monday, Thursday morning, the Chazan will say all the Yehi Ratzons, and then everyone will say that last paragraph together. Again, it's not the Chabad custom to say it, but it is the common Ashkenaz minhag to say it, and we omit it on days when Tachnun is not said. Okay, after this, the Sefer Torah is returned to the Aron HaKodesh. It is a mitzvah for every person before whom the Sefer Torah passes, as well as the one who raised it and the one who rolled it up, to accompany it to the Aron HaKodesh. So you walk, if the Sefer Torah passes you sort of follow it to the Aron HaKodesh. Again, this is something which is minhag Ashkenaz more than, when do you put back the Sefer Torah? So if you look in the Siddur, here, let me open up. Just give me a moment here, I'll open on the screen. You'll notice a difference in minhagim. Just a moment. While we're waiting here, a reminder that this Friday, Bill, is going to be Rosh Chodesh. So you can pay attention in the reading of the Torah, what we spoke about last time.
Okay.
That verse.
I just got one question. You said it's not a Chabad mitzvah to follow with the Torah, but yet I've seen Hasidim on videos and whatever, they all rush to the Torah and follow it.
I don't know that it's not a Chabad custom. I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure if there's any specific Chabad custom in relation to that. Okay. So here you have a Monday and Thursday, you have the reading of the Torah, and then we say Ashrei Unavad Tzion. So when do you put back the Sefer Torah? So the Chabad and the Chassidische Nusach and the Sephardi custom is that the Sefer Torah is returned to the Aron Kodesh here after Kaddish, after Ashrei Unavad Tzion and after Kaddish. But Minhag Ashkenaz is that the Sefer Torah is put back earlier on. I'm not sure if they do it before the Kaddish or possibly even before Ashrei Unavad Tzion. Yeah. But anyway, so there's different customs of when you put away the Sefer Torah. So again, just another thing you can pay attention to if customs interest you when you go to different shuls. All right. I'm not even sure if did that show up on your screen? The siddur that I was showing? No.
I don't think. All I saw was what I see now.
Yeah. No. Okay. Whatever. I didn't.
Okay.
Whatever. The point is that there's different customs of when you put away the Sefer Torah, and again, every shul does their minhag. Okay. When a Sefer Torah is unavailable, one should read aloud from the Chumash and the congregation should listen so that the mitzvah of Kriya not be forgotten. So obviously the kosher laning is when you read it from a Sefer Torah. In absence of that opportunity, you read it from a Chumash in order that we don't forget that there's such a concept. A minyan that is praying and has no Sefer Torah to read a Sefer Torah may not be brought to them for the purpose of Kriya, even if they are incarcerated in prison. This applies even for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. So the idea is that it's disrespectful to the Sefer Torah to be brought to sort of be schlepped around for us to use. However, if preparations were made a day or two in advance to have an ark or a box where a place was set aside for the Sefer Torah, then it is permitted to bring the Sefer Torah. For an esteemed person who is ill, it is permitted to bring it, even if it is only for the purpose of the Kriya. Others maintain that for an esteemed person, even if he is not ill, or for an ill person, even if he's not an esteemed person, it is permitted. The lenient opinion may be followed on Shabbos, Parshas Acher, and Parshas Para, because some maintain that those two parshas are obligatory midiraisa. Okay, so essentially what he's saying here is that we don't just take a Sefer Torah from one place to the next. It has to be an established shul to do so. The exceptions that he brings over here are for Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, if preparations are made a couple of days in advance where you've already designated a place to put it. Additionally, he says if somebody is an esteemed person and he's also sick, or possibly according to some opinions, if he is esteemed even if he's not sick, or if he's sick even if he's not esteemed. And he says that there's two Shabbosim in the year, Parshas Zachar and Parshas Para, where we read those special readings, which according to some are obligatory on a biblical level, and so we can be lenient. In practice, what I have observed is that we are fairly lenient about this, that we do allow, in most cases, we will allow a Sefer Torah for whatever reason, that we're not going to be able to have. I remember one time, we were snowed in. We knew before Shabbos it was going to be difficult to make it to shul when we went. I think, Bill, this was in Winston Towers. I think it was before you moved to the building.
Right. Okay.
We brought a Sefer Torah just for that Shabbos. It was going to be a big snowstorm, so we had a minyan just for that Shabbos, and the rabbi said that was okay. Similarly, even when somebody sits shiva, so now you have from the Chavra Kadisha designated Aron Kodesh, it's still not so simple, so to speak, that it's permissible, but nevertheless, the widespread practice is that we do. Now, there is also a concept, there's an idea that if you take a Sefer Torah to somewhere, it has to be used at least 3 times. And so I have seen, to be honest, I haven't really seen this in Chicago, but I have seen, certainly in England, and even I think in New York, encountered this a couple of times, that somebody will specifically make a minyan, somebody who's sitting Shiva, Islam will specifically make a minyan in their house on Shabbos afternoon for mincha, even though obviously there's no official Shiva rituals or visiting or anything like that on Shabbos, but they'll make it so that you have 3 times, because we learn on Monday morning, you learn on Thursday morning. So if you make a minyan on Shabbos afternoon and you use the Sefer Torah 3 times in the Shiva house, then that is considered sort of for 3 times it's okay to take out the Sefer Torah to another location. Be that as it may, if you ever find yourself in a situation where you want to bring a Sefer Torah, consult your local competent Orthodox knowledgeable rabbi, and hopefully it will be allowed. I need your guys' input over here. We finished chapter 23. Chapter 24 are the laws of what to do if you find a mistake in the Sefer Torah, which it's interesting. There's lots of different laws, but perhaps people prefer to skip to chapter 25, which is more relevant to the layman in shul. So all 2 of you vote.
Let's skip.
Let's skip. Aaron? All right, if you want to learn it,
I need it.
Sorry?
Works for me. I'm along for the ride.
All right, we'll go to number 25.
Therapist? Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so chapter 25, just a second. Laws relating to Ashrei Avodatzin and the conclusion of the prayers. Okay, we say Ashrei, yeah, so you see he already said in the previous chapter that you return the Sefer Torah, and now he's talking about Ashrei Avodatzin. The Chabad custom, and many have the custom that we say Ashrei Avodatzin, and only afterwards do we put away the Sefer Torah. Okay, just sort of paying attention to the different customs. Ashrei and Tehillah David are said. Okay, so just to explain what he means over here, we call it Ashrei. Hey, let me share the screen just a sec. There. Now, okay, you see the siddur? I'll make it even bigger.
Yep.
We call this prayer Ashrei. Ashrei is comprised of Psalm 145. Psalm 145 starts over here with the words Tehillah David. And then there are 2 verses beforehand. Ashrei Yeshuv Salah. Actually, so the second of these 2 verses is the very last verse of Psalm 144. So if you're ever saying Tehillim, Psalm 144 starts with Ashrei Yom Shekach Alei and then leads into 145 over here. And Ashrei, the first of the Ashreis, is from much earlier on in Tehillim. It's from Psalm 84. So that's why the Kitzur refers to this chapter of Ashrei, which is those 2 introductory verses, followed by Tehillah David, which is Psalm 145, are said. Should concentrate well when reciting it, especially when reciting the verse Pesach HaSidecha. You open your hand, as mentioned in chapter 14, that if you say that verse absentmindedly, you should go back to repeat it, because that is the most important verse of that thing that should be said with kavanah. Afterwards, we say Lam Natseach. Lam Natseach is Psalm 20, right? So again, you have here. Right, here we go, Psalm 20, right over there. The psalm is omitted on the following days. Rosh Chodesh, Chanukah, Purim. The same rule applies for a leap year, like this year that we're on right now, where we have 2 Adars, on the 14th and the 15th of Adar 1. So even though it's not Purim, we call it Purim Katan and Shushim Purim Katan. Nevertheless, Lam Natzech is still omitted. The day before Pesach, the day before Yom Kippur, and on Tishrei. Neither is it said in the house of mourning. On the day that Lam Natzech is omitted, Keler Chapayim is also omitted. Okay, what that means is as follows. Keler Chapayim is a section that is said before lading. So whenever it's Monday and Thursday, Here we go. That is said just before the opening of the ark on Monday and Thursday. So on these days, which he enumerates here, Rosh Chodesh, Chanukah, Purim, etc., we omit Lav Natseach, Psalm 20, and also we omit Keler Chapayim. Now that there is another minhag, which is the Chabad minhag, is that we omit these verses on any day when Tachnun is not said. Anytime when Tachnun is not said, we omit both of these things. We omit Lav Natseach, Psalm 20, and also Keler Chapayim. So if you look here, this is from the Chabad annotated Siddur. Over here it says the following paragraph is recited on Mondays and Thursdays, except when Tachnun is not said. And similarly, if we go forward to Lam Natseach, on days when Tachnun is not said, the following paragraph is omitted. Now, yeah, so there's numerous days on which we don't say Tachnun. According to the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch's minhag, you would still say Lam Natseach except on these 6 days. Rosh Chodesh, I mean, it's more than 6 because Rosh Chodesh is about 18 days throughout the year. Chanukah is 8 days. Purim is 2 or 4 days, depending on the year. Erev Pesach is 1 day. Yom Kippur, Tisha B'Av. Some also have the minhag not to say it on Isur Chag. Okay, different minhagim. In addition, the Chabad custom is instituted by the previous Rebbe, by the Rebbe Rayat, that on any day when we don't say Lam Natseach, we don't say Psalm 20 as part of the davening, then we do say it after davening. And that applies even on days on Shabbos and Yom Tov, right? Shabbos and Yom Tov don't even make it into this list because he's talking here about weekdays on which you don't say it. On Shabbos and Yom Tov, it's not even printed in the Siddur, so to speak. Nevertheless, the Chabad custom is that on any day where we omit Lam Natseach because we omit Tachnun, we then supplement it by saying Psalm 20 after davening. So we don't say it as part of the davening, but we do say it afterwards. We say the Kedusha that is included in the Valatzion with the Targum Aramaic translation. You should be careful to recite it with concentration. Targum should be said quietly. In a mourner's house, the verse V'anizes Brisi is omitted. Okay, so a few things are going on over here. First of all, if you look in the Valatzion, so you have the verses of Kedusha. Kadosh, 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 right? And then we say it again in Aramaic. Then we say Baruch Kavod Hashem Imkaimei, right? These are all verses which are called Kedusha. You know them because you say them in Kedusha in the repetition of the Amidah. And then again, we say in Aramaic, Brichi Karad Hashem Masam Eshchinte. Then again, we say Hashem Yimlech Levoid Hashem Achuzikoyim Nolam Elmaya. So he's saying now that we say these 3 sections with the Hebrew and the Aramaic, and you should say the Aramaic quietly, he says. Now, some have the minhag, this is not really the Chabad minhag, but it is a widespread minhag, that you should say this together with the minyan. So if you're going again, Bill, you go to your shur and you'll notice that these 3 verses, the Chazan says loud, and then everybody says together, Kaddish, Kaddish, Kaddish. And then the Chazan will say these words loud, Kol Rash Gadol, and everyone will say loud together the words Baruch Kvod Hashem Imkaimei, and the same over here with the words Hashem Yimlech Le'olam Voed. So some have that minute to say them loud together. If you recall, a few months ago, we reviewed the laws of prayer as they are in the Rambam on a Sunday morning class, and the Rambam holds that only the Chazan says of Valatzion. It's not to be said by the whole community, only the Chazan says it. So nowadays, that's not the minhag. Nowadays, everybody says it. But nevertheless, some have the minhag that those 3 verses of Kedusha should be said loud together by everybody in unison. And the Aramaic translation of that word, of those verses, we then say quietly together. So we said and then say quietly. Then he adds in the parentheses that the second verse of Valatzion is Anizos Brisi Oisam Amar Hashem Ruchi Asher Lachat V'Hashem Tipticha Lo Yamushim Bichem Pizaracham Pizar Zaracha Amar Hashem Yatav Adoilam, which, let's read it in English, is, as for me, this is my covenant with them, says Hashem, my spirit which is upon you, my words which I have put into your mouth, shall not depart from your mouth, nor from the mouth of your children, nor from the mouth of your children's children, declares Hashem, from now until all eternity. So which words are we talking about? Any guesses? Which words is God saying that they will be in our mouths and will not depart from our mouths of ourselves or our children for all eternity?
I mean, is it referring to the entire Torah?
Exactly. Words of Torah. Right? So
All right.
here, so because we're referring to words of Torah, so on Tisha B'Av, when we don't learn Torah on Tisha B'Av, at least we don't learn most sections of the Torah on Tisha B'Av as part of the sign of mourning. So therefore we omit this verse on the morning of Tisha B'Av, right? As it says here in footnote 4, on Tisha B'Av, omit this verse and continue with V'yata Kodesh. Now, what he says over here, and again, I have not seen this custom, although it's very possible that some people have this custom, is that in a Shiva house, you also skip that verse. Because just like we don't learn Torah on Tisha B'Av, so somebody who is in the midst of observing Shiva also does not study Torah. And so he says in the mourner's house, we don't say that verse. It is forbidden to leave the synagogue before reciting this Kedusha. There's also, does he talk about that here? Right. Also, if somebody is rushing to take off their tefillin, so ideally you should keep on your tefillin for the entire davening. But if you're rushing to take off your tefillin, so then you should try to make sure that you keep your tefillin on at least until after the Kedusha of Avodat Tziyun. You're supposed to say, if I recall correctly, it's brought that you're supposed to say 3 Kedushas while wearing your tefillin. So the first Kedusha is in the blessings of the Shema, preceding, 2 pages before the Shema, we have Kodesh, 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 and Baruch Pei Hashem, right? The second Kedusha is the Kedusha that is said, which we colloquially call Kedusha, the Kedusha of, which is said as part of the repetition of the Amidah of the Chazan. And the third one is the Kedusha of Avodat Tziyun, and afterwards you can take off your tefillin if you have to. You should glorify this Kedusha by saying it together with the congregation, and therefore if you arrive at the synagogue when the congregation is reciting, you should say it with them even before you say your own prayers. You may recite this Kedusha even before saying the 2 preceding verses of Avodat Tziyun and Nizes Prisi, and after you conclude the Kedusha, you go back to say them. Certainly you may skip Asher and Amnatzech in order to say this Kedusha with the congregation, and afterwards you say what you skipped, right? So I already pointed out that indeed many have the custom to say those verses aloud, so that everybody says it together. Okay, we're already 8:30, but I think we'll just take another 1 or 2 minutes to finish the chapter. Then we say Aleinu L'Shabeach, and this should be said with great reverence. Yehoshua instituted this prayer, Joshua, when he conquered Yericho. Then we say psalm for that day, as well as other psalms every community according to his customs, right? The song of the day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, etc. After leaving the shul and reciting, you recite the verse, Hashem Necheni B'Magli Tzedek, I think is the word. It's not my minhag to say it. But there's all sorts of things that people say. We say the 6 remembrances, we say the Tehillim, the way it's separated for the days of the month. Some people recite the 13 principles of faith, and Imamins. Some people say the Parsha of Man, some people say the Parsha of Tshuva, some people say Ha'azinu. There's all sorts of things that different communities have customs to say afterwards. In Chabad, primarily, it's Ein Kelekenu, and then Aleinu, and then the Tehillim, the way it is for the day of the month, and the 6 remembrances. You should bow towards Aron Kodesh like a people taking leave from his master. When leaving the shul, you should not leave with your back towards Aron Kodesh. Rather, you should walk out sideways and do the same when you descend from reading the lectern, right? That's if you have a bima that has steps going up, so you'd step, you step back, you go on, you sort of back up, going backwards. When leaving the shul, it is forbidden to run or walk with long strides because this would make it appear as if your stay in the shul was like a burden to you. This only applies when you leave to go to work. But if you leave the synagogue to go to the base medrash, to the house of study, then it is a mitzvah to go and rush because you're going to the mitzvah. You're not running away from the shul, you're running to do a mitzvah. Okay, we'll stop here and continue next Tuesday, please God.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Actually, a quick question
Any
about
questions?
that.
Sure. Sorry.
Yeah. So actually, I have 2 minutes and then I have to run. But so if you're not supposed to rush away from the synagogue after you pray, does that also apply to if you're davening alone?
In the shul.
No, just like let's say or I don't know if this is applying to a specific time, but let's say you're davening, I don't know, you're davening mincha in your house, if you.
I mean, it's certainly always admirable to daven slowly and to not rush. This specific halacha is talking about rushing out of shul, but yes, certainly the same would apply to any davening, that you should try and be present for everything you say.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, the second question you said? Huh? Bob, have you been here?
I didn't know.